one of you. So I always have to give the clarification right off the bat. I'm here talking to all of the women on sexuality today. Merry Christmas. Right? No. So here's the disclaimer I'm going to give you. We are absolutely going to be incorporating in every single thing that I do, it's all about identity in Christ. Where do we find our identity in Christ? Where do we look for that in the world around us? But then where are we supposed to go and look for it? And for each one of us, this contemplation, especially in my life, led me to the place where I thought to myself, why am I enough? Everyone says I'm enough, especially in the church. I grew up in the church. I've been a Christian my whole life. And I just remember so many times people saying, you're worthy. Jesus makes you worthy. You're enough. You're enough, Heather. But I didn't really feel like enough. And you know where that led me? It led me to finding my identity for a long time in my sexuality. And not necessarily, maybe some of the cultural identities of sexuality today, the LGBTQ plus things that are happening, right? Hot topics that are happening in our culture around us. I'm talking at least 20 to 30 years ago, right? When it was really just actually, I think, a simpler form of sexuality and identity in sexuality. And it's something that every one of us in this room can identify with. And it's just looking for yourself in the affirmation of somebody else, of another person, and all the different ways that manifests in our lives. So Sexuality Mentality is my book. A lot of the resources that I produce for the church through our nonprofit, L3 Resources, it's Live Life Loud Resources, but that's a mouthful, so we condense it to L3 Resources. A lot of the materials that I produce, that I write, and everything that I speak about, it kind of comes back to just recognizing first and foremost, hear me now, look me in my eyeballs, right? Do I have everybody's attention? You are more than a physical body walking through this world with physical value and a physical contribution to make. You are more than a physical body. God has created you for so much more than just how well you perform today and the success you achieve. The way that you stand up at work, at home, and whether or not you're getting along with your family or your kids like you, or you have a good relationship with them or your spouse, your friends, your family. That's all performance-based. Am I performing well enough to get the approval of somebody else? To be enough? God says, you don't have to impress anybody to be enough. So let's talk about what does it look like to impress other people? Because this was huge for me. This was a big, big one. I'm like, well, I'm not trying to impress anybody. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm kind of, doing my own thing over here. I feel like I'm a pretty confident person. I'm not here to impress anybody. Well, guess what? It actually turns out that when I stopped and I started thinking about it, I actually was, because I constantly was putting myself in competition with the women around me. And that started way back. I can look back even to like 3rd, 4th grade. I was in competition comparing myself with the other girls in class and what they were wearing and what they did and how they talked and where they hung out and who was together. And as I got older, that kind of manifested into, like teenage stuff. And all of those things still existed. I'm comparing myself to all the girls around me and what their lives look like. And it constantly left me feeling like I wasn't what? Say it. I wasn't enough, right? And then, of course, that leads you to getting the approval of other people. So, recognizing that I don't need somebody else's approval in order to have dignity in the fact that I am a human being and I exist in this world. Did you know that that's actually enough? Did you know that is, people say to me all the time, especially students, because a lot of my ministry over the last 15, 20 years has gone from doing pro-life ministry, life issues ministry, women's ministry, which I love being here with you guys today. And then that's driven me into working predominantly with students and teenagers. And we've really looked at that demographic between 10 and 24-year-olds. You know why? Second leading cause of death in the United States today, students taking their own lives between the ages of 10 and 24. Not okay with that. You know why? It's such a filthy lie. It is such a filthy lie that any one of us, God's most priceless possessions, that any one of us would lose hope, would lose an understanding of how incredibly precious and priceless we are to the creator of all things, right? And you know why? Why we're losing sight of that? Because we're trying so hard. The world is telling us and constantly pushing us to say, you need to perform, impress, and get the approval of other people, and that's all you're worth. This physical body, this mind, and what it's capable of, right? That is all you have. That's your contribution to make. And that is a lie. That is a blatant lie from the pit of hell, and I am here to say I'm absolutely not okay with it. And I really hope that by the time you leave here today, you go through those doors and you tell every single person that you come across and you encourage them with that message of what it means to be a human being set apart, created by the creator of all things, plugged into the source of life so that you're never disconnected, you're never separated. Because, that is what it's about, right? Satan wants to separate us. He wants to separate us. So a lot of times I have students especially ask me, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna fuss with this. I have a really weirdly small head, and it doesn't stay on. Students ask me all the time, how is Jesus applicable to me? How is he relevant to me in this day and age? And I have to kind of go back because I had to ask that same question myself. Even though I grew up in the church, I didn't understand that we have a tangible Jesus, that Jesus is actually real and present in our lives. Right now, right here, Jesus is with us. And he's actually effectively with us. AFF and EFF, effectively and effectively with us in our daily lives. So this is how I explain it to students. We kind of have to go way back to the very beginning of time and creation. So we've got the Garden of Eden. God creates Adam and Eve, right? And life is perfect. God creates Adam and Eve because he wants to be in relationship with them. Oh man, God's most incredible intention, the thing that he desires above all things, is to be in relationship with Adam and Eve, with every one of you, right? With me. So then life is good. The garden grows, everything is going well, and then we know that the tree of life comes and the serpent comes and Eve is tempted and she takes the bite of the apple and sin enters the world. We're all familiar with that. We following? Yeah? Okay. Sin enters the world, and what happens at that point? This is why sin is bad. Sin is bad because it separates us from God. It separates us from the source of life, our creator, the creator of all things, but the creator of every one of us. And you can't live in disconnection from your creator because he plugs you in. He gives you everything you need in order to get through this life. And so if you're separated from him by anything, and Satan knows that a guilty conscience that comes from a sinful nature and action, that separates us from God. And it separates us from one another. And little by little, we find ourselves more and more alone, more and more disconnected, right? And then it's really hard to kind of get back to that place where you're connected again. That's why we need you, church, right? That's why the world needs Christians. That's our great mission, to say, hey, I don't need to be disconnected from God because Jesus bridges the gap between my innate sinful nature, because I'm going to be sinning. That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm a human being, right? We have a sinful, fallen nature. We are sinful, fallen people living in a sinful, fallen world. That's not an excuse. That's an explanation and understanding. I am a human being. This is who I am, and this is what I can expect from myself. I am not going to be perfect, right? And when we try to edit and give the world this edited vision of this perfect life that we're trying to, put together and only show people this much of it, I'm so perfect, I'm performing great, please be impressed by me, approve of me. You know what it does? It completely negates us being in it together and recognizing that our humanity is the thing that connects us more deeply than anything could ever divide us. So why do you think Satan's attacking the value of human life? The value of your life. You're just a physical body walking through this world. You have physical contributions to make. If you can't perform well enough, if you can't impress other people and keep up, and if you don't have the approval of the people in your circle or of the world even, then you belong over there. You're not good enough. You're unworthy. And that sense of unworthiness is what drove me to a place in my life where I was disconnected, where I was separated and I was alone and vulnerable. Picture that one lost sheep. We hear about that parable in the Bible, that one lost sheep that goes off. And what does Jesus do? He leaves the 99. Yeah, he leaves the fold and he goes after the one. Why? Why does he do that? Because he knows that that sheep is vulnerable to the attacks of the world, the dangers of the world. But together, the 99, they're going to be okay. They've got each other. This is okay. He can step away for a minute and go get that guy and bring him back. And that is exactly the beautiful model that Jesus Christ himself gives every one of us as the church as well. Together, we're good. We're okay, right? We're together. We are in the Word, receiving tangible Jesus over and over and over again. And we'll get to that this afternoon, so stick around, okay? But we can step away from the 99 for a minute to go and seek after the one, because their life matters. And the reason that you know that their life matters is because you know first and foremost that your life matters. You matter. I named it the You Matter Tour because I first and foremost have to stand in the mirror every morning and I have to face myself. I have to say, Heather, you matter. And only at that point, when I can look at myself and I can say, Heather, you matter. You are God's most priceless possession. Jesus Christ bridges the gap for you. He redeems you and he makes you good enough because God created humanity to be in relationship with him like nothing else can. You are part of that, Heather. You matter. But then it doesn't stop there. When I know that, and I can say, Heather, you matter, it's at that point that I can walk out and I can extend that same value, that same dignity, that same honor, that same respect for human life, every human life, to the people in front of me. Because here's the reality. Either every human life has value or none do. Either every human life is God's most priceless possession and is valuable, or none are. When we give people, when we make the value of human life subjective, okay, dependent upon circumstances, how well you perform or impress or get the approval of other people, when you make the value of life subjective, and this is how sly Satan is, you give everybody else in the world permission to make that same judgment against you. And now what we've seen is slowly over time is we've become a culture that sees ourselves first, right? And everybody else is just a physical body walking through the world. So it doesn't matter what I say or do to you. It doesn't matter how I treat you or approach you, because I can't even say or approach myself with dignity and honor and respect and love and worth, because I just don't even know that about me, because we have just been so inundated with diminishing the value of a person's life, of human life. And why is that? Because God created human life as his set-apart, most precious creation. And that's why Satan is working so hard to tear us down. So I want to get into Psalm 139 with you. And I know I asked Angela not to put anything up on the screen because I didn't want you to get caught up looking at the screen when I was reading with you this morning. But I want to go through this with you. There it is. All right. I want to go through this with you because Psalm 139, raise your hand if you're familiar with Psalm 139. Okay? Some of you are, some of you aren't. Psalm 139 changed my life. Long story short, I grew up in the church. I went to Sunday school. I am your average, everyday youth group member all grown up, probably a lot like yourselves, right? I had a very strong faith. I remember, being in high school, praying, going to church, and that was an important part of my life. But I made a very big mistake, and that was keeping my faith life separate from my secular life, I guess, right? From my normal life, my everyday life. So I had my church friends, and then I had my school friends. I had my faith, but my faith, really didn't play into my everyday life at all, okay? It was two separate things. And that was a fine line to walk. And it was good. It was okay when things were good, but it was very, very dangerous when things were bad. So after my parents divorced, as I was going into my freshman year of high school, my parents divorced and my entire world fell apart. And my sense of self and my sense of identity just really started to go down the tubes. And I didn't recognize it at that point. I was actually like, I'm good. I'm glad they're not fighting anymore. I'm moving on. Like, they're gonna be healthier. I'm gonna be a healthier person. And I didn't even stop. I couldn't even stop to recognize and to process through how this was going to affect me and my sense of self. So slowly, right, over the course of the next 5 years, I got through high school. You could have looked at me and said, man, Heather, she's doing great. I played sports. I was in swing choir. I was doing all the things that I loved to do. And I had a pretty happy disposition. But behind the scenes, I was struggling with an eating disorder. Tremendous sense of worthlessness. Feeling like I never belonged. Every single day I had anxiety walking into school because I wasn't sure if I was going to fit in that day or not. And it just felt different. What I've learned is that that's a lack of confidence. It comes back to confidence. When we feel those things, ladies, it's a lack of confidence. It's a lack of confidence in who I am. And what I can expect from myself, and that I am valuable, even apart from my contribution to the world, or maybe what I can't contribute. So I struggled with those things through high school, and by the time, and I had, I never drank, I never did drugs, I was not a partier, anything like that, but I had relationship after relationship after relationship, just trying to find myself in the affirmation of other people. So by the time I got to college, I was doing okay until my sophomore year, and I was staring down at a positive pregnancy test. That's humbling. I'm a people pleaser. Give me a big hallelujah if you are too, right? It was really, really hard for me to say, so here's the thing. I messed up. I had this relationship, and, now I'm facing an unplanned pregnancy, and I don't know what to do. And I think, it's really important for me to say at this point that I think all of us tend to look at an unplanned pregnancy as a mess up, right? And I just want to say that even though I felt that way at first, that pregnancy and that beautiful child's life, that time of my life was the most impactful, transformative time of my life. That God came in and he took my entire mess that I had made and he just flipped it all upside down and said, I'm here. I am here. I see you. I know you. And I have accounted for this. I have accounted for every single thing that you've ever done. Psalm 139 says that your everything that you would ever think, everything you'd ever say or do, every thought, word, and deed, the good, the bad, and the ugly, God already knew it was going to happen, and he has accounted for it. He works not just, in spite of it, but he works through it. He uses it. Man, is that true in my life. I have goosebumps. And how many times have I told this story? Because God is so good, and that's how he works. So here's something that we automatically look at a hard situation or a challenge or a perceptive failure in life, and yet at the same time, what God sees or what we see as failures, as struggles, as weaknesses, God says, oh no, this is where my sufficiency reigns. This is where Jesus bridges the gap. It's the most powerful thing that we can ever go through in our lives, is to recognize that Jesus, when we are not enough, Jesus is enough. Jesus is enough. So cool, right? So one of the things that I want to do is just read to you a little bit about what I learned in Psalm 139. So I will say really quickly, because sometimes I forget to tell the story. I actually was a single mom for a year with my daughter Bella. I dropped out of college at UW Parkside in Kenosha, Wisconsin, as a sophomore. I dropped out of school, moved back home to northern Michigan, and finished off my pregnancy. It was a very hard pregnancy. I had placenta previa. I want you to know right now, I lost every friend that I had in the world at that point, because it turned out nobody was really interested in hanging out with a pregnant girl, right? Good friends. Choose your friends wisely. My dad always said, go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. This is important. This was a good lesson for me to learn. I felt like I was really, not super celebrated unless I was acting good enough, performing accordingly, So when I had failed, everybody kind of went away. But you know who didn't go away? This beautiful congregation of people. My church, actually, where my husband is serving as the pastor now, 22 years later, this wonderful congregation of people who brought me in, the Christian church. My personal family, my mom, my dad, my siblings, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, they didn't leave me. And some of my childhood friends as well, that had just always been there for me, and they knew who I was, and they knew that this was, just a hard time in my life when I needed someone. So I moved home. I was all alone. It was very hard, and every night I prayed, because my parents had gotten divorced. I did not want my child to have to go through that as well. And I had always prayed, I'm going to be married one time, that's all. I'm not getting married, unless I know for sure. It's going to be one time. And then I found myself pregnant, and I thought that it was all over. But I prayed, Lord, if there's any way that you could make this right, please make this right, God. I just want to be married one time, and I want the best daddy and the best husband for my little girl, right? So for a year, I was a single mom with Bella. And all of a sudden, this nerdy guy from church showed up after playing football at Concordia Mequon for 4 years, looking like a total hunk at church one day, and the rest is history. I asked him out. He was for real, though. It's so funny, because I always say, he was 3 years older than I was, and he hung out with my really nerdy cousins. And he always says, I always say, you were way too nerdy for me, Matt. And he was like, yeah, well, you were far too shallow for me. So we have a good little fight about that. It's great, because both of us kind of had to get to the place in life where we had more self-assurance. We knew who we were in Christ first before we would be compatible together. And that was really cool. So we've been married now for 21 years. And he's been the best daddy and the best husband to Bella, and also to our son, Paul, who's a sophomore up at Michigan Tech University in Houghton. And then we have a daughter, Sophia, who's a sophomore in high school as well. So we've had a good life. God has blessed us. And I say that to you just as an affirmation that God comes full circle. He keeps his word. And when I was contemplating how to handle this unplanned pregnancy, the night before I was supposed to go in, and received counseling to find out more about my options with that pregnancy, God brought a verse to my mind, and it was, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not upon your own understanding, but in all things acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. In all things. In all things acknowledge him. Acknowledge me, Heather. I am right here. Tangible Jesus, right? I am right here. I am not leaving you. Trust in me with all your heart. Acknowledge me. Lean into me. I'm going to direct your path. And you know what? The beautiful thing about that story is I have spent the majority of my career working with post-abortive women, women who have lost their children through miscarriage or, some other sort of death, helping women and men make adoption plans for their children. Can you even imagine? Right? Do you want to hear the really cool thing? Get this here. After I'd been speaking for about 2 years, I was riding in the car with my mom. I'm doing pro-life speaking. Who grows up and says, I'm going to be a pro-life speaker when I grow up, right? Not. I pretty much had decided I was going to bury that secret in the closet and not talk about it. And everybody who just assumed that Bella was Matt's, that would be fine, right? And here I am. God puts me out there and says, no, you're going to talk about this really openly, and you're going to share your story with people. So I'm in the car after speaking for about 2 years, and my mom is with me, and she's come to just many, probably 100 events with me. And out of nowhere, she just says, I've had 2 abortions, right? Yeah. I said, no, I didn't know that. I'm so sorry, Mom, but I'm so thankful that you could tell me that today. And she said I said, when? When did you have 2 abortions? And she said, one right before you and one right after you. Yeah. And I have a brother who's 2 years older than I am. Yeah. Don't tell me there's not a God. And don't tell me that he doesn't have a plan for your life, even in the midst of the things that we see as our failures, our weaknesses, the skeletons in our closets. Oh man, you gorgeous, precious women, right? Let me encourage you today. Your story matters. The stories, the experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly, they matter. They make a difference in the lives of other people, right? Your testimony affects other people's lives. And when you share those vulnerabilities, when you share your stories, that's literally you going to the one and bringing them into the fold. That's what God's showed me. So it's really easy for me to share my vulnerabilities now and my stories, because I know that it is bigger than me. It is about more than who I am. And I also know that my value has never had anything to do with my condition. My human value, the value of human life, is completely separate from the human conditions that every one of us goes through in this world, that we are all facing and experiencing together. Let me show you how this works. And then we're going to end this morning session here with a little bit of Psalm 139. Don't overthink this. What is this? You see, it's money, right? Yeah? For those of you up front, how much money is this? $5, okay? So it's a $5 bill that's worth $5, yes? Okay. If I crumple it up, and I know some of you have seen this before, but follow me on this because I'm not going where you think I'm going. If I crumple it up and throw it on the ground, okay? If I stomp on it and kick it around, if I drag it through the mud, tear it up, rip it up, and it's almost unrecognizable because it's been beaten so badly by the things of this world, the people of this world, just kicking it around, stepping on it, disrespecting it. If I offered that to you, would you want it right now? Why? Right? Because it's still worth $5, yeah? Right? It's still $5, no matter what it looks like, it's $5. And this is what I want you to leave here knowing about today, is that your value is like this $5 bill. Your value stands on its own. You are God's most priceless possession because God created you, because of to whom you belong. You are a human being, God's most priceless possession, set apart. That's why you're valuable. And that value has never had anything to do with the conditions of this world that you've gone through. Getting beat up and pushed down, kicked around, disrespected, scuffed up, dragged through the mud. Your conditions connect you in the deepest ways. God allows those conditions. He sends Jesus into those conditions to bring us together, not to divide us. Not so that we can sit in guilt and shame and anguish and secrecy, right? Striving, trying to be enough, trying to prove ourselves, trying to qualify ourselves to exist. No. You exist because God created you. The creator of all things created you with a plan and a purpose and a dignity, and he is using you to further his kingdom every single day of your life. That's why you exist. And in the midst of that, you're going to experience some human conditions. And those things are going to have to do with the 5 components of your human body: your physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual selves. Okay? We're going to talk about that this afternoon a little bit. We're going to break that down, because the next question then is, well, how do I deal with those things? Okay, great. My value stands on its own. I am valuable, but how the heck do I deal with the conditions of life? How do I process through those things? And I think, ultimately the easy answer to that is just understanding who you are and what you can expect from yourself as a human being. And then putting some really good practical tools into place in order to be proactive in your life, and understanding, at the very, very core of all of that, Jesus produces everything you need in you to get through this life. So I'm going to answer the question then, how do I tap into Jesus? How do I practically, applicably, tangibly tap in to Jesus? We're going to talk about that this afternoon. So we have just a couple more minutes here that I want to just read to you Psalm 139 before we take a break for lunch. And I want to read this to you, and I want you to listen to these words. You can even close your eyes if you'd like. Just really soak these words in, because this is amazing, because especially in light of talking about about sexuality, we believe that King David wrote the Psalms, right? And Psalm 139, we know that the struggles that David was going through with his sexuality and his identity and this power play of life, but being so fervently faithful and wanting to submit to God's will in everything that he did. And so Psalm 139 is this beautiful understanding of how God sees us and how precious you are to the creator of all things, your creator. If you want to know who you are, go to the one who made you, right? So this is what God was speaking through David about the value of your life. It starts by saying, "Oh Lord, you've searched me and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise, and you perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all of my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely, O Lord. You hem me in, behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It's too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence, Lord? If I go up to the heavens, when I am on those mountaintops, right? If I go up to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths of Sheol, the darkest, deepest, hidden places of the world, you're there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand, the powerful, almighty right hand of God will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, if I say, surely I can just keep this to myself and go over here and hide in this corner and not tell anybody what's going on with me and what I really truly think and feel, how unworthy and not enough I feel, even the darkness will not be dark to you, God. The darkness will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. For you, God, created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Say that with me. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in the book, but before even one of them came to be. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I had a pastor say to me once, God takes into account our humanity. What a beautiful, beautiful thing. That's grace. That's grace. God takes into account our humanity. He created you. He knows who you are, and he knows what he can expect. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, these thoughts, they would outnumber the grains of sand. And when I awake, I am still with you. This is a beautiful picture of life at the very beginning, and before even humanly possible, right? God created our inmost being, our spirit, the spirit that connects to his spirit, And then he creates our physical body and our mental and our emotional components and our social components. God is telling us all through Psalm 139 how intricately he has created us. And then this last part, it seems so confusing at times to read this one until I finally understood it. The psalmist goes on to say, if only you would slay the wicked, O God. Away from me, you bloodthirsty men. They speak of you with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? Have I nothing but hatred for them? I count them my enemies. That is powerful. We've got this beautiful love letter, and then all of a sudden, it's like, man, I hate them with all the hatred and all the any enemies of yours are enemies of mine. And what is going on here? We made a huge shift. And you know what? So powerful. When I realized what was going on here, this is the psalmist saying, whoever hates you hates me. And if anybody hates you, I hate them with complete hatred. And you know why? This is a battle. Satan is trying to take you down. He is trying to take me down. He is trying to take our students down. He is trying to take Jesus Christ down. All in his vengeance to become God. Yeah, I hate that. I hate when students or anybody feel like they are worthless and not enough, and that causes them to hurt themselves, to hurt other people, to separate themselves, to be vulnerable and alone and hopeless. I hate that with complete hatred. And I will defend every one of you because you are God's most priceless possession. And that's exactly what the psalmist is saying here. We defend one another. We defend humanity. We defend ourselves because of who we know ourselves to be in Jesus Christ. And then it ends by saying, search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. Guide my path, Lord. lead me in the way everlasting. That's hope. That's hope. No matter what the everlasting looks like, he's leading me. I recently went through the book of Nehemiah. That was fun. I'm one of those people that opens my Bible and whatever I come up with, that's where I start reading, okay? So God brought me truly to the first page of Nehemiah. And I'm reading for a long time about ratios and cubits and square footage and all of the things that I don't want. Like, wow, so boring. And finally I'm like, Lord, why am I reading this day after day after day after day? And I was having an especially bad week, and it was a Monday morning. I'll never forget. I'm like, Lord, if you could just throw me a bone. I just need to know why Nehemiah. If you could please help me understand. Nehemiah? Why am I reading this for like 2 weeks now, you know? I'm getting nothing from this. You know, I closed my eyes, and I put my hands in my head like this, and I was just praying and listening to music. And all of a sudden, this vision just came to me. And it was like a boomerang, you know, on your smartphone. And it was Nehemiah working and God speaking to him. God saying, you know, whatever he's saying to Nehemiah, Nehemiah's looking to him. And God said, I speak, you listen. I lead, you follow. And God was teaching me that without the direction, the guidance of every single brick, without Nehemiah looking to God, every single step along the way, he would get messed up because it's too important. There's too many details. There are too many outside forces, too many other things that Nehemiah could never anticipate. It was too big that he could never do it without God. So Nehemiah had to learn to look to God for every single step. I speak, you listen, Nehemiah. Heather, right? I lead, you follow. What comfort that brings. So I'm going to leave you with this question before you go to lunch. It's going to bring us into this afternoon. Where's your focus? Where is your focus right now? Is your focus on performing and impressing and getting the approval of other people? Or is your focus on being this child of God and resting in him and looking to him to get you through the conditions of your life, knowing the entire time, secure the entire time that your value, right? The value of your life, your worth is in Jesus Christ. It is in knowing that you exist as a human being created by God, the creator of all things. Jesus died for you, that you might never be separated from God again, that you would always have access through him to be plugged in to the source of life. So after lunch, we're going to talk about what does it look like to be plugged in? Tangible, practical Jesus. How do we access him? How do we shift our focus? Because we have to constantly bring our focus back. How do we shift our focus back to Jesus and our value in him so that all of the physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual components balance out day to day? And we can move forward, assured in that value, and then be able to speak to others of that value as well.